Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, theys, and gays. This is The Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you're having a great day whenever you're listening to this. I am so excited. I got a chance to watch, and by the time you hear this review, or this interview, pardon me, the review for this movie, Balloon Animal, will be live on the channel. I've got two of the people who are the most involved with said film. I've got the star of the film. I've got Katherine Waddell here. Katherine, hi, good to meet you.
Hi, I'm good. My last name is actually Waddell.
Oh, it's Waddell.
Yeah, no worries.
No, thank you so much for correcting me. So
It's
Waddell.
okay.
Okay, I'll remember that. And then we've got the writer and director of said film. I've got M. Johnson here. M, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Nice to be
Um,
here.
yeah, thank you so much for making the time. So I watched it yesterday. I really enjoyed it. It's a and I mean this is a compliment to you specifically, and it's a hard watch at points, but
Uh,
but I honestly appreciated how, like, how do I put this? It felt like you were, as you're writing, you're like, how much can I make things uncomfortable in certain moments? And I really appreciate that because there's this one point where Poppy's talking to her dad about just, going for a walk, and just the more that scene went on, the more I was just sitting there going, I would rather be anywhere else than here right now. So, like, was that an intentional decision as far as how you want to portray the relationship, or was that just something that you kind of fell into as you're writing it?
I think uncomfortable situations are just natural, and they happen way more than you might think. And especially in this scenario where we have two characters that don't really see eye to eye, or they're not on the same page and they're trying to communicate. It's like a power dynamic between the two of them in that scene. And so it is uncomfortable and it's hard to watch because you don't know who's right, kind of.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to choose which side is right, quote unquote, right. So I think it's important to be able to show flaws in both characters, but also like correctness in both characters as well, or like points of view that are just different for both. But it is intentional to have those moments, and I'm glad it came off that way. I
Yeah.
think if you have an emotional reaction to anything, I'm doing something right. So
As far as before I throw to Catherine, I was really happy that you did this because I've been doing this for a while, and one of my biggest complaints about female written, directed, led films is that sometimes there's bitchiness for the sake of bitchiness, where like there's a conflict with the female relationship that doesn't need to be there whatsoever, and yet it's just kind of thrown in because it's such a cliche.
Mhm.
And I really like that Poppy, Lala, and Sadie, the relationships never comes across like that. It feels like they actually are there for each other and wanting to build each other up. Being the writer and everything on this, like, how important was it to portray the female characters like in that light?
I think me and Catherine can both speak on this, where we both really value female friendships in our lives. And there have been female relationships that don't pan out the way that you want them to. But then there's also been female relationships in our life that have really stuck it out through, the times. And I feel like with these characters who have grown up together, and have just been so tightly connected for so long, they're almost like siblings more so than just friends. And so while they all have like different perspectives on their like life and their worldview, they also have conflicts and how they communicate, and how information is revealed. But at the end of the day, they are there for each other and they see each other. And I think in sibling-esque relationships, you're not afraid to confront somebody about something, which is also important in this, where the female characters, they have directness and bluntness that I don't think comes off as like bossy or rude or
I
cruel.
agree.
I think it comes off as I don't know, like almost sadness in a way, or just they want to understand each other, but it's just not reading right, and that's why there's the conflict. Yeah.
It always felt like it came from a place of love when they were doing that. Catherine,
Mhm.
can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I would say it also goes back to like the first question of what you guys just talked about, where it's like different viewpoints, where like none of them in the friendship are wrong for their reaction, right? So it's completely okay that Poppy wants to leave the circus, and it's completely okay that, maybe Lala is a little confused but willing to keep the secret. And it's completely understandable why Sadie would erupt at the party and be embarrassed and overwhelmed that this was just dropped out of nowhere, for that
Yeah.
sibling lifelong friendship relationship to, seemingly be coming to a quote unquote end. And I would speak as creatives that Em and I are not a big fan of cliches, or if we are, if we are going to do a cliche, or if it's unavoidable, how can we spin it on our head? And I agree with you that drama for the sake of drama is not necessary. So it's like, one thing we were really trying to get at is that this is an intimate family. This is a real world. The audience is popping in for 1 week to see what's going on with them. So how can this feel as natural and realistic as possible? There's not going to be any, misheard over, understandings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I always found Poppy to be like I liked her evolution throughout the story because from early on and the portrayal of Ilia as your dad I thought was just perfect. I loved the way to play off each other. Kind of talk to me about what he brought to the table, and then was there any hesitation or any sort of roadblocks that you kind of found as you're trying to portray Poppy?
Well, speak to Ilia first. I mean, he's amazing. Like just as a performer and as like a human being, he's just like so kind. He's so supportive of the film, especially for someone who's sort of like way more successful than the rest of us, So he's just like so willing to throw himself in. And, Em and I would say like from the beginning, we knew it was going to be him from the second we saw his audition. And it was kind of like, oh, this might be just like literally perfect because he
Oh,
is able to capture that naturalness in a father figure where you're looking at someone who, yes, is overbearing and is too strict and maybe invasive, but there's also a softness to him that is also valid, a
yes.
vulnerability. We do see like the cause that the mother leaving has left him with, like the wound, the open wound, and how he's handling it. So once again, I think that just goes back to, there are layers to characters and they're not all good and they're not all bad. And especially when you're exploring a power dynamic, it's not always that simple. So he's amazing. And, like I said, he's a professional. So it was so easy to perform with him, so wonderful. He just is ready to go all the time, especially with Em allowing us to improv a little. I also added a natural tinge to it. But yeah, portraying Poppy. I mean, I've been with Poppy since the beginning, so Em and I have been started writing this in 2000, the end of 2018.
Oh wow.
And she would, go and write a draft and then bring it to me and we would read it together and discuss and edit, and we did this for like a year and a half. So I've had her in me for a long time. I've had her in my brain. I've had her in my heart. I've been working on her for a while. And I just think, like you said, she has a really strong journey that makes sense to me, that is valid to me. And maybe she doesn't always get it right when she's trying to, go along that path. But I mean, I personally think she's amazing. I think Em wrote a really wonderful, wonderful young woman.
So I do have to check you on one thing. It's talking about the whole success aspect. I mean, you two did co-find a film studio. I mean, that is something like let's put some respect on your name a little bit.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and in that spirit, because the Oscars just happened, obviously, and that's its a whole other thing. But as far as myself, one of the movies I loved last year was something like Women Talking. I remember going like, wow, that's a like not an easy watch, but that's one of those movies that needs to exist. For the two of you, when it came time to go, we want to go ahead and launch a film studio. How important is it? Because I mean, I think this is the first film coming out of that coming out of your studio, right? Is this the first one? Okay.
Yeah, we have an in association on another film, but this is our first like everything us film.
Okay. So how important is it for this to be the first one, and how important was it for the two of you to have that conversation? Because I mean, that's a leap. I mean, it's an important leap, but that's a leap. So how did the conversation kind of come about, and why is this film like the first film?
Um, Speaking of both those points where there's like a part of it that's, logistics, in creating the film company where we had a lot of people, producers and just friends that are also in the industry kind of guide us because it was our first time, really being at the helm of a giant feature like this, and kind of guiding us on how logistically it would be best to use money and funds and distribute things for, bank accounts, whatever. So logistically, that was one of the reasons why we felt that this was necessary. And then on the other hand, we built this company because we have a strong perspective on what needs to change in the industry, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
It lacks a lot of women, and it's funny because I feel like people don't really see that it lacks a lot of women because, there's so many actresses, that there's so many, female focused movies, like roles for women to, explore stories and stuff like that. But another major point in our company is to focus on women behind the camera as well, bringing them into leadership department positions, and just giving more women access in that part of the industry, which is severely lacking in women. And this film, at least for me, when we discussed it early on, we wanted to play to our strong suits. So I write really good drama, slice of life, coming of age types of films. And Katherine felt that she would excel most in that type of role as well. So we really just were playing to our strengths. And we felt that this type of film was a great launching off point for our company.
Catherine. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, everything Em said. I also know like our company, besides just like the women aspect, Em and I had been creative partners or at least working together on films for like what, 5 or 6 years before we launched First Bloom Films.
Yeah, 2016.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had been working together for like a really, really long time. And we had had similar experiences about also just like specifically how we're treated on set. We had worked from being PAs to being directors to writers to co-producers to executive producers. And the lower, quote unquote, you were on set,
Mm,
the bottom of the rung, the worse we were treated. And it just didn't make sense to us. And we just really couldn't stand it. And, there can be a lot of ego and pride and creativity in art. And
absolutely.
we were just like, this sucks because I feel like I'm working just as hard as anyone else. But because I have a certain title, I'm treated like hot garbage. So like Em said, when it came to what we want to change about the industry, we just really shared the same ideology of like, man, wouldn't it just be great to like go to set and like not be nervous that you'll get yelled at that day? Like that would be super nice, So that has also worked its way into our philosophy and how we try to be leaders in the industry and how we try and lead our film sets.
I love that. I mean, I'll say myself, one of the big things as far as female representation, I mean, directing is probably the one that immediately jumps out to me. And when I was doing my little bit of research, that was something that made me happy in your kind of your mission statement was to put more women behind the camera. Because when I think about female directors and how few, like, how do I put this? There are female directors, but the prominent ones aren't featured nearly as much as the male featured side. And so seeing that that's such an important thing that you two want to change was something that made me really happy. As far as the representation behind the camera, this being more of a coming of age, slice of life film, are there certain genres that you're like, there's less representation here, we should go here first? Because when I think about something like horror, not a ton of female, directors in the horror space, but some of the best performances in the last decade have been from from actresses in the horror genre. So are there certain genres you're trying to go ahead and kind of put your stamp on first, or?
Hmm. I mean, a majority of the things in my repertoire are mainly drama. However, I have interest in horror. I have interest in thriller. I love both of those genres. Me and Catherine are, horror fanatics in the way that we want to see a good horror film. So we will go to the movies and watch the horror films and see if they compare or they're new or they're fresh. Because it's, hard to make a good horror.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I think the Babadook was written by a woman, which I remember watching that and I was like, this is a whole new kind of horror. This is so cool. And I feel like horror would be a great genre to test out or even just do. I mean, it's not even testing, it's just to do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to like have to limit yourself when it comes to your creativity and where you want to explore. So while I do feel like my strong suit is that drama genre, a lot of people are, testing drama in thrillers and testing drama in horror and doing genre switching and stuff like that. So I think everything is up for grabs, and I'm totally open to, exploring those genres.
All right. Catherine, what about you?
I would also say that like something that Emma and I'm sure if you read interviews in the past, I say this all the time, but I think it's important, is that Emma and I also consider ourselves like audience members first.
Okay.
So we will like never stick ourselves in a corner to never leave because we like watching all types of films.
Yeah.
And so like how Em and I approach filmmaking is like, what do we just feel like doing? Like, what sounds fun? What would we want to watch right now? What idea came to you as you were falling asleep that's just super genius? And now we need to write it down and put it in the vault because we want to do it, I also think we're talented enough to do whatever we want. So it's just a question of when will we do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Speaking on that front, I think I saw that that you two have like 4 films in development. I read that
On the website, there are 4 films listed that are currently in development. Yes.
okay. So like what genres are those kind of in?
So the one that we're both working on most right now, that one is a thriller. It does bring in drama elements, because obviously that's my forte. So it is dramatic, but there are very intense thriller moments within that. And then one of them is drama, just straight up drama. Actually, 2 of them are. I think Dissonance and Fry are both just drama.
One's like a family drama and the other one's like a religious drama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I think Donna Isabella, that's a period piece and possible biopic. It depends on our ability to do that. It might just be inspired by. We haven't really explored. That one's probably the furthest down on the list of things that we have talked about. But it's something that we're very interested in doing. And so we've started the planning process of like doing that, but not like full on yet.
Fair enough. Couple more questions for you. I was really intrigued by so Catherine, I'll start with you on this. Did you actually learn how to do the balloon animals, right? Is that's all you, right?
No, that's a stunt double.
Oh, I feel so deceived.
No, but well, I mean, it's great filmmaking then that you
you got me.
I learned how to do it to a degree, but it being an art form, it would be impossible. It would be like, it would take me like 4 years to learn how to do it. But I had a balloon animal making kit that I got off of like Amazon. And I would sit here in my apartment and I would learn how to do practical things like tying off the balloon, making the balloon animal dog, like the very simple, like beginner stuff, how to use the pump, and all of those like sort of practical tips. And then of course the stunt double, Teresa, her and her husband, they own a company. His name is Seth, own a company called Madcap Balloons, and they're like balloon animal specialists. They do the parties and all that kind of stuff. So I also worked intimately with them. At the time it was over Zoom because we were still, in the throes of the pandemic, on how to do things like tips and tricks and getting their life story and their experience, everything from like, what does a usual day at a party look like to what their favorite balloon animal is, to what do they hate making, tell me about your experiences with, Karens at birthday parties, like anything that you could think of. I wanted to soak in to sort of embody that, especially because I knew I wouldn't be able to make like the koala.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, either way, it was still fun. I still have the kit somewhere.
So I guess so that actually goes into like one of my last questions. Why a circus setting? Because I was sitting there the whole time, like you could plug in multiple things here, but I found it interesting that you chose the circus specifically. So Catherine, I'll kind of ask you as far as like how that was portraying it, and then Em will ask you like why you wrote that specifically.
So portraying it, it's like, I think kind of what you said hits the head on the nail, where it's like, this is at the end of the day, a drama and a story about like a girl, and whether it's her dad or her friends, or like finding love. And those are universal topics, and those are universal experiences. So it doesn't matter if that happens in the small town or the circus. The feelings as a character are the same. The feelings of feeling like you've outgrown something, or you want to strike out on your own. Anyone can relate to that, I feel. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, my journey is one thing and my environment is another.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, Em, why the circus?
Um, so, Catherine and I are also business women, owning our company and stuff like that. And one of the main things that we try and talk about when we are creating any story, is what haven't we seen? What's something new, something unique, something different? Because while, this industry cares about just, the writing in general and the story, they also care about how it looks, and they care about what they haven't seen yet. And so if you can do something different, that opens people's eyes, and it kind of just broadens like the horizon for them. So I'm like, I think that the circus was different enough so that it was interesting, visually appealing, and fun. I think it was just fun for us as creators to learn about us traveling circuses, to really put us in the shoes of people that do that for their lives. I honestly learned a lot. I did a lot of research myself. I watched a few documentaries, and read a bunch of articles about people that have grown up in the circus and lived there. And it was good for me to like just see that world. And it made me more attracted to portraying it myself and just having fun. So I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, a circus movie, but there's not that much circus in it. Uh, True, I guess. But like Catherine said, it's a universal story. The backdrop is just different, which I think is still great, still fun, still interesting.
Yeah, and there is a lot of circus in it. I would just like to know. I think there's a,
Thank you.
I think there's a good amount of it. All right, two more questions for y'all. You talked about the how this has been a process, how you've been writing this and writing it and writing it. What's the biggest change that you felt from where Poppy started when you were in the writing process, like early on, versus where she ended up for you?
Hmm. That's a good question, because this is like I'm thinking like years back. Poppy has always been an independent woman. I'll say that. So we kind of came at it with her already being independent, her being more on this like passive side, I guess you could say. I do believe she became more confrontational and less like romanticized as our
Okay.
drafts went on. So more like a real person. I think when you're early drafts, you're always kind of just like vomiting everything, and you're just like, what sticks?
Yeah.
And as you like really crack down during like the writing process, you figure out the traits and the qualities that seem to fit the character the most. And while she was always an independent woman, I think it was mainly just finding her voice, because she is quite a passive character, and that turns a lot of people off. And she also has unlikable traits, which turns people off as well. They don't like an unlikable woman. They don't like an unlikable protagonist. So it was just finding out how to make her unlikable traits relatable enough, so that people didn't excuse her or just toss her aside. And it was it's a fine line. But we had so much time that we were able to really test out every option before really landing on this one.
Yeah, Catherine, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would agree with Em. I mean, I think one of the things that we did a lot of drafting about was like going back to those cliches and making sure that, like Em said, you couldn't write her off as a cliche. There is a draft. You know, we have a pretty open-ended ending. Like it's up for interpretation. You know, you can sort of take what you want from that final diner scene between her and Drew. And we made it that way because, you know, there was a draft where she ends up with Drew in a more concrete way. And we were like, well, this is not a romance. And this is not really going to be a story of coming of age if you end up with the boy at the end in such a, you know, I'm leaving the circus and moving in with my new boyfriend, you know?
Yeah.
It
And
also felt quite like teenage.
yeah, it felt
that
too
aspect.
young. Because she is 24 in the movie. So it's like it's coming of age at an older age. Because you can strike out on your own at any point. And I think that also like it also came about in the editing room. And obviously I wasn't in the editing room, but I can speak to, you know, the things that Em would tell me. So like the final confrontation between Dark and Poppy late at night or early in the morning at like 3 a.m. There is a version where Poppy is sobbing the entire time. You know, but the version that ended up making the film was where she holds her ground a little more, is a little stronger, you know, and Em and I talked about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cried so much. I was putting my acting hat on. Why didn't we go with that one? And she's like, well, we didn't want her to end up being the crying woman, you know, that just can't stop crying, which is another cliche that is, you know, only impressive because she has, you know, a beautiful crying woman. And so it's the exploration.
She cries also just a little bit. When it comes to losing her father, that's the part that makes her emotional.
Right. So it's just, I think like what Em said, it's like being true to her independence while also trying to find a more confident voice and a more realistic, relatable person that we can all like at the end of the day, or respect in the very least.
Yeah, I like the fact that she cried just enough so that you know that like she's hurting, but it's coming from a place of her loving her dad but respecting herself enough to take this chance. And I think that's a hell of a balance you have to strike. And I think you the way you played it, the way you wrote it, I think you nailed that balance perfectly, especially in that scene. Last question I'll ask the both of you. We're in this insane time where there's so much media. It's kind of overwhelming. The film industry is changing at a very slow pace, but it is changing for women who are looking to get in the industry and just don't know where to start, whether they're writing, directing, what have you. Like, is there a piece of advice you would give them, / maybe something you wish that you knew before you got into all this? Like, yeah, any advice that you'd like to give on that front?
I think the most amazing thing that I ever did for my career was meet a like-minded individual in Emma. This work can be so isolating and it can be so disappointing and hard sometimes. And finding someone, whether that's a creative partner or like a film community in general, or just, you know, your favorite director to work with or your favorite producer to work with, where you know your time is valued, that your mind is valued, that your talent is valued, that when you go to work with them, you're working in a happy place. I think that's the best thing that I've ever done, because I've been through the weeds and I have found a film community or film family that I love working with and that I can rely on, and that it makes those harder days easier. And so I would just say to like women out there, it's just like find your film family that believes in you and the things that you believe in, and you share ideologies, and stick with them.
I love that. Em, what about you?
Coming from like a writing perspective, I think a lot of women out there feel like they need to tell stories that could only be done by a woman. And when I say that, I mean just like female issues in general. But I think there are so many other stories that you're missing out on if you only focus on stories that just a woman can tell. women can be in so many situations. They can do so many things. They can do all of the things that men can do. Their perspective is different. And that's what's interesting. And so you don't have to focus only on the things that women go through, but put them in the same situations, in the same rooms as men, and just write their perspective on it. I think people are missing that a little bit, and only valuing the things that women can do, but men can't. And I think there's so much more untapped potential in stories if you focus on just a woman's perspective rather than the actual physical situation that a woman can only deal with. Not saying that those stories aren't amazing, they are. I just think that this industry as a whole can really see women as more than just those situations and focus on them in any situation. And I think with Balloon Animal, it's a very simple story, but it's shown from a female perspective. And that's what makes it good. It's not just because she's a woman dealing with women things. She's a woman in her environment and reacting to it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that answer. And well said by the both of you. And thank you both so much for making the time to come on. I really appreciate this. This was so much fun. Before I let you two go, if you could please let my audience know where they can find out more information about the two of you, about Balloon Animal, about please tell us all the things.
So we have an Instagram, which is at Balloon Animal Film, where you can find all the updates. You know, we are gearing up for release. So we have lots of fun little tidbits that we're releasing every day. We also have a TikTok, which is, what is it?
First
Emma?
Bloom Films.
First Bloom Films, where we're, our creative genius M is posting a lot of cool little videos. M has Instagram as well. It's at go, or I always say go Tema because that's my nickname for it, but it's at got Emma. That's Instagram. And then I have Instagram as well, and it's at catg.waddell.
Also, if you live in the Los Angeles area, we will be, once it's closer to the release date, we'll be doing actual physical things around the Los Angeles area. So if you live in the area and you want to, come by, drop by, get a QR code from us, get a little treat from us, follow the Instagram because it'll have all of the details once it's closer to the release date.
Yes, we'll be giving out balloon animals
for free.
Spoiler. Seriously though, Katherine M, thank you again so much for making the time. I can't wait to get this interview up so everyone can listen as well as the review. I'll definitely let you both know when that's live. But again, thank you so much for making the time. Best wishes to both of you, and I can't wait to see what film you guys make next.
Thank you. Thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
Agreed.
Yes, take care.
Bye.